Welcome friends to this third lecture of week 3, and we are basically discussing the chemistry of soil organic matter. And in the previous two lectures we have discussed the definitions of soil organic matter and humus and other components of soil organic matter. What are the major fractions of soil organic matter? Then we have discussed about different types of soil forming factors and how they influence the formation of soil organic matter. We have discussed the global carbon cycle and carbon sequestration, and also we have discussed different pools of carbon and how the movement of carbon can be observed from one pool to the another pool. We have discussed the major difference between the humic substances and non-humic substances, and then we have discussed about the four humus formation theories, and also we have seen how water can act as a major carrier for movement of soil organic matter in different water bodies. So, in this lecture we will be talking more about the structure as well as the difference between different types of humic and humic fractions. So, if we see the properties of humic substances, the humic substance has some some specific properties which basically differ from any other known compound. For example, their diameter, they are very small, the diameter ranges from 1 to 0.001 micrometer for humic acid, and in case of fulvic acid they are even smaller. So, when we are using HA, that means it is humic acid, and when we are using Fa, they are basically fulvic acid. In the last lecture we have already discussed that there are three major fractions of humic compounds. One is humic acid, another is fulvic acid, and the third one is humin. So, these humic fractions are hydrophilic and consist of globular particles, and humic substances are also considered as coiled long chain molecules or 2D or 3D cross linked macromolecules. So, it is complex structure, as you can see. As you can see, this is a humic acid molecule and this is a kind of fulvic acid molecule, although their structure is not very well defined and their structure can change depending upon different conditions. So, the negative charge of humic substance derive from ionization of their acidic functional groups. We will see what are the major acidic functional groups which are present in the humic matter or humic substances. So, basically the idea of showing you this slide is to tell you the fact that the humic compounds are having very intricate and complex structure which is different than that of non-humic substances. So, if we see the structure and the different acidic groups which are present in the humic substance or humic fraction, you will see that majority the major groups which are present are basically alcoholic hydroxyl groups and phenolic hydroxyl groups as well as carboxyl groups. So, among these carboxyl groups and phenolic hydroxyl groups are more prevalent. So, you can see that this is basically a large complex of organic humus molecule consists of chains and rings of mainly carbon and hydrogen atoms, and these this is basically simplified diagram and showing different types of chemical groups which are responsible for high amount of negative charge. I have already discussed during our inorganic component lectures that organic matter produces couple of folds more cation exchange capacity or negative charges as compared to the clay minerals. So, these negative charges basically developed by the ionization of these different groups which are present. So, the three groups highlighted all include this hydroxyl. You can see this is one hydroxyl, this is another hydroxyl, this is another hydroxyl, and that can losses in hydrogen ion by dissociation and thus become negatively charged. So, in this side we are showing the whole functional groups. However, in this right side we are showing you the ionized form of these groups, where they are basically donating the protons and getting negatively charged. You note that the alcoholic, phenolic and carboxylic groups on the right side of the diagram are shown in the dissociated state. So, this is basically an alcoholic group which is dissociated, this is phenolic group which is dissociated, and this is carboxylic group which is also dissociated, while those in the left side are still have their associated hydrogen ions. Remember, whatever charge which is developed in the organic humus, basically this is a pH dependent charge. This is not a permanent charge, this is pH dependent charge or variable charge, and as a result of that you can see either the development of negative charge or there is a presence of positive charge, as we have seen in case of clay mineral, depending on the surrounding pH conditions. So, association of the second hydrogen ions, as you can see here, can produce also net positive charge. So, this is how this is why the charge which is developed in the soil organic matter is known as the variable charge. It is not a structural charge. Okay. So, let us see the properties of humic substances. If you see the properties of the humic substances, the average molecular weight of fulvic acid varies from 500 to 5000 Dalton, whereas average molecular weight of humic acid is quite larger than that of fulvic acid, and it varies from 3000 to almost 1 million Dalton. And molecular weight of measurement basically depends on pH, concentration and ionic strength, but in general humic acid has several times higher molecular weight than that of fulvic acid. And soil humic acid have we have already said that soil humic acid have higher molecular weight than aquatic humic acid. So, that is why I am telling you, although they are humic acid, their structure varies from one environment to another environment, and the mean formulas of humic acid is basically C10H12O59. However, in case of fulvic acid it is C12H12O99 for fulvic acid. So, this is the difference in their mean formulas, and their weight, molecular weight also quite different from each other. So, if we also see the composition of humic acid and fulvic acid, this table shows the clear difference between composition of humic acid and fulvic acid. One thing is clear, that humic acid contains higher carbon than that of fulvic acid. As you can see, in case of humic acid, the carbon concentration varies from 53.8 to 58.7%, whereas in case of fulvic acid it is 40.7 to 50.6%. The hydrogen content is 3.6 to 6.2% in case of humic. However, it is also 3.8 to 7% in case of fulvic. So, we are not seeing very much difference here. Oxygen, on the other hand, you see in the humic compound we have only 32.8 to 38.3, and in case of fulvic acid it varies from 39.7 to 49.8. So, fulvic acid contains more oxygen because they contain more oxygen bearing groups than that of humic acid, and as a result of containing more oxygen bearing groups, fulvic acid are more acidic in nature than that of humic acid. So, nitrogen where concentration in humic acid varies from 0.8 to 4.3, whereas in case of fulvic acid it varies from 0.9 to 3.3%. Sulfur, if we consider sulfur, the concentration varies from 0.1 to 1.5%. However, in case of fulvic acid it is 0.1 to 3.6%. So, this is the difference between the difference of composition between humic acid and fulvic acid, and one thing is pretty is very clear that carbon is more in case of humic acid, whereas oxygen is more in case of fulvic acid. So, as we have seen in the previous slide, the major elements of humic acid and fulvic acid are basically carbon and oxygen, because this carbon basically forms the backbone, and fulvic acid have lower carbon but higher oxygen. We have seen that from the previous table. And also another important criteria is generally considered for classifying different humic types is the atomic ratio. And among the atomic ratio, O by C ratio or OC ratio is considered as the base to classify different humic types. Now, remember, in case of humic acid, this OC ratio is basically 0.50. However, around 0.50. However, in case of fulvic acid, the OC ratio is more 0.7, because the oxygen content is more in case of fulvic acid, whereas carbon content is less in fulvic acid as compared to the humic acid. So, depending on this OC ratio, we can differentiate humic acid from fulvic acid. So, let us see what are the values in details. So, if you see this table shows the atomic ratio of elements in soil humic acid and fulvic acid. So, one thing is clear, there are three different types of ratio, atomic ratio. You can see hydrogen carbon ratio, oxygen carbon ratio or nitrogen carbon ratio, and we are focusing more on this oxygen carbon ratio. One thing is clear that in case of soil fulvic acid, the OC ratio is quite higher, that you can see that Schnitzer and Khan they have proposed this value, they have calculated these values 0.74. In case of Ishiwatari, they have calculated this at 0.70. In case of Malcolm, they have calculated it 0.64. However, in case of soil humic acid, the OC ratio is less than or around 0.50, as you can see. In case of the Schnitzer and Khan, they have calculated it 0.48. In case of Ishiwatari, they have he has calculated it 0.50. In case of Hatcher, they have calculated 0.47. Steeling, they have calculated 0.46, and in case of lean here they also calculated 0.57, which is near 0.50. So, one thing is clear that this OC ratio can be an important criteria for separating two different types of humic compounds, that means humic acid and fulvic acid. So, if we see the properties of the humic substances, this is a very compact representation of different compact representation of variation of properties between fulvic acid, humic acid and humin. So, one thing is clear that if we consider the humic substances or pigmented polymers, they can be differentiated into fulvic acid, humic acid and humin. Humin is basically the non-insoluble part. So, the color of the fulvic acid varies from light yellow to yellowish brown, whereas the color of humic acid varies from dark brown to grey black, and in case of humin it is pure black. So, as we go from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin, obviously as you can see the intensity of the color is continuously increasing, and also increase in degree of polymerization, as you can see from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin. Obviously, the structure of humic acid is more complex than that of fulvic acid. However, the structure of humin is more complex than that of humic acid. And also increase in molecular weight, we have already discussed this point, that the molecular weight is less in case of fulvic acid, and it is more than fulvic acid in case of humic acid. In case of humin, it is the highest. And in case of carbon content, the carbon content is lowest in case of fulvic acid. The carbon content also increases from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin, and decreasing the oxygen content, as you know that fulvic acid contains more oxygen than that of humic acid. So, fulvic acid as we go from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin, we are seeing that there is a decrease in oxygen content from 48% to 30%. As a result of more oxygen containing groups in case of fulvic acid, obviously their exchange acidity is higher than that of humic acid as well as humin. So, exchange acidity, if we consider exchange acidity, it is highest in case of fulvic acid because it contains more oxygen as well as acidic groups, and as a result their exchange acidity is higher than that of humic acid, and also which is further higher than that of humin. And also the fulvic acid is the soluble fraction of humic compounds, whereas humic acid is their degree of solubility decreases from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin, and this fulvic acid is soluble fraction. The humic acid is insoluble in acid. However, this humin is a typically insoluble fraction. This fulvic acid can be soluble in both acid and alkali. However, humic acid can be soluble only in alkali, and humin is a non-soluble fraction. And these are different macromolecular structure of humin. Humic acid, as you can see, this is the humic acid of peaty, sandy, hydro earth soil, and this is the humic acid of haploic phyllosgems, humic acid in podzolic soils, and so on and so forth. So, basically we can see the differences of different properties clearly in this slide as we go from fulvic acid to humic acid to humin. Remember one thumb rule that humic acid is lighter than that of humic acid. Humic acid is somewhat intermediate between humin and fulvic acid. Color intensifies from fulvic acid to humin. Molecular weight increases, oxygen containing group decreases, exchange acidity decreases, and degree of solubility also decreases, and degree of polymerization increases as you go from the fulvic acid to humic acid to humin. So, let us see the functional groups of humic substances. A couple of slides back I showed you the complex structure of organic humic substances and 3 or 4 major groups which are present in the humic compound. Now, in this slide we are going to discuss the all different types of functional groups which are present in the humic substances. So, the primary acidic functional groups are carboxyl groups and phenolic OH groups. I have shown you both these groups in that slide, that the carboxylic group and phenolic groups are the primary acidic functional groups. So, we can see here in the functional groups we have seen carboxyl and these phenolic hydroxyl groups. Apart from that, enol groups are there, quinone groups are there. So, the other functional groups are basically alcoholic OH groups which we see here, and also the quinonic and ketonic groups. So, these are the major functional groups, and humin are high in alcoholic OH groups, and humins are basically high in alcoholic OH groups. Fulvic acid mainly consists of this carboxyl group because, and as a result they produce more exchange acidity, and total acidity of fulvic acid is higher than that of humic acid. It is quite we have already discussed. So, we can see that among the acidic groups, carboxylic groups, phenolic OH groups, enol groups and these quinone groups are major groups. In the neutral groups, alcoholic OH and then ether, ketone aldehyde, esters, they are the major neutral groups, and among the basic groups amine and amides are the major basic groups. Okay. So, these are the different groups which are present in the humic substances. Okay. So, what are the different types of amino acids which are present in soil organic matter? One thing we can see that there are different types of amino acids which are present in the soil organic matter, and we can classify them also. So, the first classification says it is a neutral amino acids. So, among the neutral amino acids you can see the glycine, also alanine and leucine. These are the neutral amino acids which are present in soil organic matter. However, in case of aromatic amino acids, as you can see the aromatic rings are there. So, in case of aromatic amino acids, phenylalanine, tyrosine and tryptophans are present in the soil organic matter. And other groups, other amino acids which are present. So, in the previous slide we have seen let us go back to the previous slide, we have seen neutral amino acids and aromatic amino acids. So, also there are other neutral amino acids like isoleucine, valine, serine and threonine, and among the acidic amino acids aspartic acid and then glutamic acid. Basic amino acids are arginine, then lysine, histidine, and secondary amino acids you can see proline and hydroxyproline. So, these are different types of amino acids which are present in soil organic matter. So, now we are going to start a very important portion of soil organic matter, that how we can fractionate different humic fractions like humic acid, fulvic acid and humin. So, the study of soil organic matter, to study the soil organic matter, it must be first separated from the inorganic components, and this is basically activated. Activated or achieved by different classical fractionation schemes. Now, fractionations involve precipitation of humic substances by three ways: either by adjustment of pH and salt concentration, which is the classical method, or addition of organic solvents, or addition of metal ions. So, these are the three ways through which the fractionation of soil organic matter can be done. So, if we see the fractionation of soil organic matter in details in this diagram, alkali extraction using the 0.1 to 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide or sodium bicarbonate are usually generally done for fractionation of soil organic matter, and alkali extractions are based on solubility principles. So, if we see the soil organic matter, it can be broadly differentiated into non-humic substances. We already know that recognizable plant debris plus polysaccharides, proteins, lignins etc. in their neutral and transformed state. Also, they can be divided into, they can be also classified into humic substances, and in these humic substances these are basically fractions on the basis of the solubility. We can see fulvic acid, humic acid and humic. As I have told you in previous slide, the fulvic acid is basically it is a soluble fraction. So, it is soluble in both acids and alkali. The humic acid is the fraction which is insoluble in acid, however, it is soluble in alkali. However, humin is generally insoluble. It is insoluble in acid and as well as alkali. So, this is how we can this diagram shows the differences in their solubility, and let us see how we can actually implement this fractionation in this slide. So, in this slide we start with the soil organic matter, and then we start the fractionation of the soil organic matter as we have told in the last slide. So, once we treat the soil organic matter with alkali, obviously humin and non-humic matter which are insoluble in nature will separate out, and basically all the humic substances, that means humic acid and fulvic acid, will come into the solution. And then these humic substances or soluble humic substances, when they are being treated with acids, they will be differentiated into a soluble fraction, that is fulvic acid, and insoluble fraction, that is humic acid. Now, in the soluble fraction, that is fulvic acid, when we adjust the pH at 4.8, they can be again further fractionated into fulvic acid, which is a soluble fraction, and beta humus, which is insoluble fraction. And in case of humic acid, which is basically insoluble, if we reflux it with alcohol, we will get two fractions. One is the soluble hematomilanic acid, another is insoluble humic acids. Now, this insoluble humic acid, if we further treat it with neutral salt, then it will further divided into brown humic acid and grey humic acid. So, this shows the step by step process through which we can fractionate the soil organic matter. Again, the soil organic matter fractionation starts with the alkali, either sodium hydroxide or sodium carbonate, and then it basically differentiate into the humic fraction, which is soluble, and non-humic fraction as well as humin, which are insoluble. Humic substances will be treated with the acid. You know that humic acid are insoluble in acid, so they become insoluble, they remain insoluble, and fulvic acid again will be solubilized, and further we adjust their pH to get either soluble fulvic acid or insoluble beta humus. In case of humic acid, if we reflux it with alcohol, we will get humic acid, which is insoluble, which we will further treat with neutral salt to get soluble brown humic and also insoluble grey humic fractions, and hematomilanic acid is basically the soluble fraction of humic acid, which basically gets solubilized after refluxing with alcohol. So, friends, we have discussed in details about the composition of the soil organic matter, humic substances, and their difference in their properties, as well as how we can separate them from each other in this lecture. I hope that you have learned something new in this lecture. In the next lecture, we will be seeing in detail structure of soil organic matter, and let us meet in the next lecture to discuss the structure of the soil organic matter in details. Thank you.